This is day 4, and today we're going to be talking about making associations one of the first steps in training. So we're going to go over the big 4 influencers of behavior again, and we're going to especially focus on experiences, so how horses learn, and one specific way or 2 specific ways that horses learn through our training and our interaction with them. So when we talk about genetics, we can also think of that kind of covering instinctual behaviors. So there are some behaviors that are instinctual for the horse and that are kind of switched on either by the horse reaching a different age or by certain situations. So I think the best example of a behavior switching on is with a young foal. So when a foal is born, he almost immediately will start trying to stand and then start looking to nurse. So it's not something that anybody teaches the foal, it's just an instinctual behavior that, as soon as he's born, he starts doing those things. And we already talked about environment in video 2 and state a little bit in video 2 as well. So these are things that influence the horse's behavior as far as his health and his well-being and also what's going on around him. But a huge one is obviously what the horse has experienced in his own life, and training is part of this. Associative learning is one of the kind of main ways that horses learn, and it incorporates these 2 things. So associative learning is basically the horse learning to connect his actions or things in the horse's environment with certain outcomes, good or bad. So operant conditioning is the most common kind of framework for training that we use with horses. And operant conditioning has this training quadrant. It has reinforcements, which are things that are going to increase behavior, and it has punishments, which are going to decrease the behavior. Now, whenever you see these plus and minus, that means plus is positive and minus is negative. And it doesn't mean good or bad, but it's more in a mathematical sense. So this top part of the quadrant here, this is positive reinforcement. So this is any time that the horse does something and something good happens to him afterwards. It can be intentional, so it can be the horse doing something that we like. He goes forward really nicely when we ask, and we give him a treat afterwards. But positive reinforcement can also happen when we're not necessarily intending it. So for example, if we have a horse in the barn that tends to be a little bit loud and obnoxious during feeding time, maybe he calls a lot, or he paws, or he kicks at the stall doors, and we ignore that behavior and we just feed him anyway as we're walking down the barn aisle, what can happen is to the horse, he's actually getting a positive reinforcement for kicking or pawing when he hears the feed buckets. Negative reinforcement is very common in training, in riding, and it's pressure and release. So anytime that you, say, squeeze your leg on your horse, and then you release that squeeze when he steps forward, or anytime that you take rein pressure and then you release that pressure when he slows down or he stops, you're using negative reinforcement. And punishments, a positive punishment is usually what we want to mainly stay away from the most, especially when we're teaching the horse something. Positive punishment would be if we took like a whip or a crop and we gave the horse a smack after he did something that we don't like. And then negative punishment is taking something away. So if we're, say, feeding our horse a treat and he gets a little bit too mouthy or grabby for the treat and we take it away, we're using negative punishment. Classical conditioning is the classic Pavlov's dogs. So Pavlov's dogs, Pavlov was a scientist, and he discovered that when he would ring a bell right before he fed his dogs, the dogs would soon connect that bell with food, and they would start salivating and showing signs that they expected food to come as soon as they would hear the bell ringing. So these 2 things we use often in training, and the more that we can become conscious of when we're using these things and how they're affecting the horse's behavior. So for example, how he's getting reinforcements or what things are happening, whether we're doing it purposely or it's just happening accidentally, that might be punishing his behavior. and influencing him that way, and also through classical conditioning, what is he connecting that you might not have been aware of before. In the next video, we're going to take a look at another form of learning that is very important for our work with horses. It's non-associative learning, and we're going to look at one specific piece of that, desensitization. So I'll see you in that next video.